Hi everyone. My name is Yolanda and I am coming to you from our Harper Therapy offices here at the North Fork Professional Plaza in Lutz, Florida. We service Lutz in the surrounding areas, Land O'Lakes, Wesley Chapel, Carrollwood, Brooksville, Odessa, Trinity, all of the surrounding areas. And I wanted to come to you today as a follow-up from our conversation last time about how to determine if your teen could use some professional support. And I wanted to come and chat with you, parents, moms, dads, aunts, uncles, grandparents, caregivers to teens, about some steps for listening so that you can help facilitate conversation with your teen. So here at the North Fork Professional Plaza, one of the reasons that I love our space here is that there's a lot of green, a lot of nature. We've got a beautiful little fountain out front, and there's a pond out back, and there's been a little visitor at our pond. Our visitor has kind of come and gone over the past several weeks, and he's back again, a little gator. And he's probably, I don't know, my neighbor said that he was probably 4 or 5 feet. I'm thinking more smaller, 3 to 4 feet, but I was taking Toby out earlier, and I couldn't help but think how sometimes trying to communicate with our teens is a lot like being around that gator in the back of my office. Sometimes talking to our teens is like navigating around that gator. I've been keeping the dogs on a short leash, and I'm kind of afraid that this gator will snap. Not quite sure what might or might not set this gator off. So kind of a little walking around on tiptoes, being extra cautious and aware. I don't know about you, but that's a lot of times how I feel when it comes to communicating with my own teens. Sometimes it is more painful than having a root canal. So we are in this together, caregivers, moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles, anyone who works with teens, who cares about a teen. It's a challenge. So what I want to share is just kind of some setup, kind of some ground rules about how to set ourselves up for success in communicating with our teens. One, let's just make sure that we are able to show up as the adults in the situation as our best selves. That means being well rested. That means just kind of being in a calm state of being for ourselves, so that we can kind of navigate through whatever our teens throw our way. Make sure that as you are chatting with your teen that you're engaged in some kind of activity to kind of take the weight off. There's a lot of pressure to just face-to-face communication that could be really heavy and daunting for all of us, and especially our teens. So it might look like having a meal with your teen, doing some holiday baking, going for a drive, going for a walk, just some activity to take the focus off the intensity that can come from that one-on-one interaction. So let me share with you now some 5 steps to listening so that our teen will talk. Our teens just aren't very communicative. Typically, we usually get grunts and nods and shakes of the head. So as we are having conversations with our teens, and this is an ongoing thing, this isn't a one and done thing, so let's just kind of be real about that. It's going to take some practice to put these skills into place. At first, your teen might be wondering what the heck is going on, like who is this person who's talking to me this way or listening to me in this way that's different. So we're going to allow ourselves some time and space to practice these skills because we get good at what we practice. So the first step, these are really steps of empathy. Empathy is just the groundwork of our relationships. It's where where the magic happens. Empathy is a skill, and empathic listening is a skill that we cultivate. It's not, some people are empathic or empathetic and some people aren't. This is a skill set. And the first step of that skill is perspective taking. That old adage of walking a mile in someone else's shoes. We're going to kind of put ourselves in the place of our teenager. We have all been through our own teen experiences. For most of us, that has come as a mixed bag of pleasant and unpleasant experiences. So we're going to remember kind of what it was like, and also recognize that things are much different these days for our teens. There are a lot of stressors that our teens are facing now that we didn't have to face when we were growing up. So we're going to kind of put ourselves in the place of our teens. We're going to remember what it was like. And things that from an adult perspective, we know our teens are going to have challenging experiences. They're going to gain friends and lose friends, and that's part of life. And so we can be quick to kind of step into a place of it's not that big of a deal, just get over it. But that's not really perspective taking. We're going to recognize that these things weigh heavily for our teens as they're going through it, just as they did for us when we were going through it. So that's step one, perspective taking. Step two, this is a challenging one, is staying out of judgment. For a lot of us, we are just quick to judge. That's part of our human nature. So we're going to recognize that, and we're going to take active steps to just move back from that judgment. We're going to recognize that as we are practicing our mad empathy skills, that's not the place for advice giving. It's really not the place for even discipline and consequences. And those things are absolutely necessary when it comes to raising our teens. And I'm not saying that they're not, but in the space of empathic listening, of really connecting with our kids, of listening so that we can open the door to conversation so that we can hear what they have to say. We're going to just kind of push the pause button on all of that and do our best to stay out of judgment. As soon as we slip into that space of judgment, you've had conversations with people when that they're really not hearing what they have to say, what you have to say, because they're too busy judging what you're telling them. So let's give our kids that space to truly be seen and heard, and accepted and loved, and have a sense and a place of belonging, which is what we all need. So that's step number 2, is we're going to stay out of judgment. Step number 3 is that we're going to recognize emotion. So if you are super awesome at this skill, you're going to recognize both your teen's emotion and your own emotion. Just knowing that when we are in a heightened emotional state, that makes it really hard for us to stay present. So just kind of noticing if we are slipping into fear, into anger, and practicing our own emotional regulation of grounding ourselves and kind of coming back to the present moment and really hearing what our teen is having to say. We're going to recognize what our teen's emotion is. For a lot of teens, for a lot of us, kind of anger, irritability, that lashing out, that's a safe way of expressing emotion, or at least a culturally kind of anticipated and expected way of expressing hard emotions. But usually there are some really challenging emotions that underlie that anger, that frustration, that irritability. A lot of times there is some fear, some grief, those kinds of emotions. So if your teen comes to you about a rift in one of their peer relationships and they're coming across as angry and frustrated, they certainly probably are experiencing that. But deeper underneath that feeling of anger and frustration is probably a fear about moving forward in their social realm without that relationship, a sadness about, and a grief and a loss about that relationship. So we're going to recognize and kind of anticipate what emotions they might be experiencing. The next step, as far as being present and listening so that our teens will talk, is to communicate the emotion that we think that they're experiencing. This is where we can kind of test the waters. We might be right. We might not be right. So, that sounds like, wow, Susie, I can just, that's so hard what you're telling me about your friend. And I can imagine that you will be feeling pretty sad. And that's where Susie can kind of give us some more information. No, I'm not feeling sad. I'm feeling really ticked off. And we could be present with that. So communicating emotion allows the person who's talking to us to really feel seen and heard and understood. And that's where the magic happens. That's where the doors start to open. The last step, and a super important step for us, is to practice mindfulness. And that means not over-identifying with our teens' emotion and emotional experience that they're going through, and not under-identifying it. So we're not going to be dismissive and say, oh, I don't understand what the big deal is. That Susie, your friend wasn't that good of a friend anyway, and obviously she's not a good friend if she's going to do this. While that might or might not be accurate, that's just us. That's our attempt to fix the situation, and isn't helpful when we're just practicing being present and practicing this empathic and listening and practicing empathy. So part of that has to do with our own emotional experience. It's super uncomfortable for us to be present with people who are experiencing intense emotions. So a lot of times we will jump at trying to fix things, trying to make the other person feel better when they really just need our presence. So we don't want to dismiss what our teen is experiencing. And on the flip side of that, it's not really helpful for us to jump into the muck and the mire and swim around in that with our teen. So that is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened to you, Susie. How awful. And I don't know how you're going to go back to school and face things. Like, that's not helpful either. So we're going to find some middle ground in that and practice being present with our teens and what their emotional experience is without trying to fix things, without building a brick wall and not acknowledging their emotions, and also without diving in there into the depths of the intensity of their emotions either. So the fact of the matter is these 5 steps, wow, they take a lot of practice. So we, as people who have teens that we love and care about, we are going to just kind of give ourselves the space and the time that we need to practice these steps and to just know that we're going to make mistakes. And it's not the fact that we make mistakes. What's more important is that we circle back around when we have these empathic fails, we call them, where we kind of miss the boat and we step into judgment or we step into trying to fix things. That's going to happen from time to time because we're human. What's most important is that we circle back around and have that follow-up conversation with our teen to say, wow, you were sharing something really hard with me, and I really blew it, and I really apologize, and I'd like to sit here with you and hear what your experience was, if you'll share that with me. It's also going to take some time to build this new way of interacting with our teens. So the fact of the matter is, this is very different from how we usually interact with one another. It's a great experience. It's a great way to build our relationship, but your team might have a little bit of skepticism because, frankly, that's their job. Their job is to have some skepticism. Their job is to practice kind of pushing us away as they step into moving into adulthood. And so hi there. And so we're just going to be gentle with ourselves, so show ourselves some compassion, and recognize that this is an opportunity to build some commodity with our teen. The more that we practice empathic listening and just being present with our teens, hearing what their experience is, taking on their perspective, kind of putting ourselves in their shoes, staying out of judgment, recognizing the emotions that they're experiencing and communicating those emotions to them in a mindful way. The more we practice that, the better that we will get at it. So I hope that this is helpful. I'd love to hear some tips of the trade from you guys there in the trenches with me as a parent about things that you found helpful in really listening to your teen in ways that you find that they open up to you. If you'll share those in the comments with us, we'd love to continue a conversation. And I am going to figure out a way to post in the comments the video from last time about kind of understanding whether or not we could use some professional support for what our teen's going through. And then I will list these 5 steps in the comments as well so that you will have those in written form too. Thanks so much, you guys, for hanging out with me today. Enjoy this beautiful day, and if we can do anything to help support you in your relationship with your teen, please give us a call. We offer a 15-minute consultation to hear from you guys about what's going on at your house and to see how we might be able to help. So have a great day.